Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to KOGA's Summer Webinar Series. This is our 4th episode. My name is Emily Childers, and I'm the Association Manager for KOGA. Thank you for joining us today. Our speaker is Elizabeth Adams with the Kentucky Geological Survey. Before we get started, I'd like to take a few seconds really, to thank our presenting sponsors, CountryMark and Ergon. Our additional sponsors include AquaClear Inc., Bingham Greenbaum Dole, Bitco, Black Ridge Resource Partners, Britannia, CountryMark, Cumberland Valley Resources, Diversified Gas and Oil Company, InLink Midstream, Ergon, Hughes Land, Phil Brown Insurance, Reliance Well Service, Steptoe & Johnson, and Wyatt Tarrant Combs. Before I introduce Liz, I want to remind you that you can submit any questions you may have along the way in that side panel on your screen, and we'll take those questions at the end of Liz's presentation. Also, next week on July 7th, Dr. Bill Hannenberg will be our presenter, and registration will come out for that later this week. So at this time, I would like to introduce you to Liz Adams.
Hi.
Give me 1 second, and I will read you a quick bio. That I embarrassingly cannot pull up right now. Hang on. Well, Liz, I'll let you go ahead and give a brief introduction of yourself as well. My apologies.
Oh, no worries. So I'm Elizabeth Adams. I work at the Kentucky Geological Survey. I am the archive manager at the Earth Analysis Research Library, and I head up the internal digital data working group, where we come up with workflows and policies to ensure our data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. I'm here today to talk about the Earth Analysis Research Library, give a little bit of an update, and talk about some of our projects. Before I get started, I do want to thank Ryan Pinkston, our facility manager. This presentation would not be possible without him. He got a lot of last-minute stats and pictures for me, so thank you, Ryan. Okay. So I want to start off kind of just talking about COVID and how that's affected how we operate. So we shut down to the public in mid-March and then completely shut down all of our work in mid-April. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've actually been able to return to work doing some of our federally funded research projects. So part of that process, we had to come up with work plans, and that will stay in place for our staff currently and any visitors when we are able to start accepting visitors again. This includes everybody must wear masks at all times, social distancing, hand washing between tasks. We've come up with some systems for workspace consolidation and making sure that everybody's disinfecting their equipment in between use. We've also established a room capacity, so 2 to 3 people per room, depending on the size of the room. And again, we are not currently accepting visitors. That will not happen until the university says that we are in phase 3, which we don't actually know when that will be. But we do have several workarounds available. We have procedures in place for drop-offs. If you have a core that needs to be split or sampled, you can work with Ryan to schedule a drop-off. We also have a new document camera, which I'll talk about shortly, a little bit later. That will be very useful. And we have a lot of platforms available for virtual meetings, Zoom, Teams, even our phone, FaceTime if we need to. So we're trying to be very accommodating in this troubling time. And also, if there's some light data collection, we do have staff available to do that as well. Again, if you have any questions, please contact Ryan through email. And now I want to talk about some of our new equipment and amenities that we've acquired over the last few years. For one, we can now drill core plugs, 1 inch and 3/4 inch. We have a document scanner out on site for any of our archived oil and gas well documents that need to be scanned. But this year, we've actually obtained a new portable XRF, a handheld gamma ray spectrometer, the document camera, and we worked to improve our well cuttings washing station. So here you'll see, in the next slide, you'll see one of our employees using some of these tools. There we go. So this is our mapping section head, William Andrews, using our portable XRF and the handheld spectrometer on some of our core. He's doing an analysis for a funded project through the USGS to identify Pennsylvania underclay. And the next slide, you can see how our document camera works. And so if there was a core that you were, or another specimen that you wanted to get a deeper dive, deeper look into, we could hook up that document camera and do a virtual meeting sharing our screen. This is also a great tool for workshops. If in the future when we were hosting full workshops again, or even once we're accepting visitors, we could have one visitor in the facility running a virtual workshop. We've also, like I said, we were improving our well cuttings washing station, and so that has, our equipment has moved to a more appropriate room, and we have upgraded from the ceiling vents to a downdraft table, which will pull the particulates downward instead of up, and be processed through several different filter systems. Next, I'd like to talk about our new acquisitions. We've received several new acquisitions in the last few years, 8 core from private industry and various research projects, 44 sets of well cuttings, roughly 100 rotary sidewall core, and a collection of over 70,000 vials of well cuttings representing 2,000 Kentucky Western Virginia Gas Company wells, which were drilled in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. This particular collection we actually found as part of our reorg process, and one of our staff, Ray Daniels, spent nearly a year processing these, cataloging them, identifying what wells they went to, recording lithology, and he was able to finalize that project basically right before the shutdown, and so we're hoping to get all that information available to the public soon. I'd also like to mention that some of these numbers, they include the generous donations included in our KOGA Shale Research Consortium project that's headed by John Hickman. Those are not available for public viewing at this time, but they will be once that project is finalized. And now I'll talk to you about our reorg. So several of you are probably well aware that we went through a massive reorganization of our facility over the last several years, or last 2 years really. And a part of that was building new shelving around the exterior walls of our warehouse. That has allowed us to increase capacity and migrate roughly 10,000 cardboard boxes from pallets on the floor up to shelving, and move 308 pallets of wooden box core under those shelving and in our aisleway single file, making everything much more efficient and easier to access. Then next slide, please. A vast majority of those 308 pallets of wooden box core were actually residing outside. We received a grant from the USGS to process those core, assessing their condition, identifying the core, cataloging them, and then triaging as needed, and then eventually moving them indoors. We also curated a a core collection representative of the Geology of Kentucky, our reference collection. And we built dedicated shelving for that specific collection right up front, easy access. And we also built some shelving for unidentified core that will need some further investigation before we can put them into our database. In effort for safety of our staff and our visitors, core viewing is no longer allowed in our warehouse. That is now in our core viewing room, where we can accommodate 5 to 6 rows of tables, which can house several independent research projects or a large core workshop. And then we'll move on to the next slide. So I'll talk to you a little bit about our core photography project. So we started this in October 2019, and it's funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. We started this project as an effort to preserve our core collection, increase access, and rescue core that was deemed at risk because of deteriorating housing. As a part of this project, we upgraded our labeling system and core management tools, collection management tools, I'm sorry. We record lithology per box, double check the information we have in our database for core for correctness, assign international geosample numbers, and repair and replace boxes as needed. Once they've gone through that process, our photographer takes a wet and dry photo, and those photos, along with the box information, gets put into a digital template, which is hosted online through our core reports. To date, we have processed over 6,500 core boxes. Over 1,800 of those have been repaired or replaced, and that represents roughly 155 cores. If anybody has any questions about this project or has a core that they would like to request for photography, definitely please let me know. And the next slide, I have a map that was produced by Doug Curl, and this just kind of gives you an idea of the core that we have photographed so far and that dispersion. As you can see, several of the core are Devonian shale and oil and gas related. And the next slide, I have a screen recording to show everybody how to find these core photos online. So the first thing is, once you're on our homepage, you'll click Data and then the Core Rock Inventory. And then once that loads, you can look for core based on the operator, the permit number, or if you just want to see how many core have photos, you can select the core box photos under included information. And once your results show up, click on any of the detailed core reports, which will open as a pop-up. I prefer to actually open these in a new window. It just kind of gives you a fuller view of everything. And there you go. And so there you can see the box lithology, any comments that were noted, and those templates. If you would like to download a template or see a larger view, simply click on that template and it'll show up full size. The next slide. Oh, it's replaying. There we go. Okay. So this is a new project that we're starting officially tomorrow. But this is an effort that we're making to develop a sustainable and research quality collection of our well cuttings representing our state's energy resources. And to do this, we're going to follow best management practices for collections by performing a reassessment of the overall collection, beginning with those that are in most dire need of attention. That would be our roughly 2,500 cutting sets that are water damaged and contain mold and concreted sample bags. And then our second phase is approximately 2,500 sets of unwashed samples. So to go through this process, to go through this process, we will be creating a new database table to house all of the metadata for our deaccessioned material. Metadata will be collected for everything, all of the collection items that we are assessing, and existing metadata will be checked for correctness. Mold remediators will be brought in to contain the area where we have our moldy material, and there it will be processed for either deaccession or rescue. After that process is complete and all of the moldy material has been addressed, they will then come back and clean our shelves so they can be reused. Any moldy material that's flagged for rescue but is not deemed rescuable because of the integrity of the physical sample. For instance, if all of the sample bags have concreted together and cannot be separated in a way that you could distinguish what portion of that set was coming from this footage versus that footage, then we will take pictures to preserve any visual observations before disposing of the material. Those photographs will be tied to that metadata and made available to the public. That same process will be followed with phase 2. We'll be flagging unwashed samples for rescue or deaccession. So here, under the guidance of Dave Harris and other KGS staff, we have developed a methodology and use this through the first kind of preliminary pass to see what kind of shakes out. And so this methodology, we're looking at the available location data, well spacing, so how many wells are within 1 mile of, how many water damaged wells are, sample sets are within 1 mile of a quote unquote good sample set. Looking at well depth and the TD formation of these wells as well. So using that information and applying it to phase 1, our water damaged cuttings, we found 14% flagged for rescue. So the next steps is to try and fill in those data gaps. One of the things that we realized is several of these sample sets do not have their depths recorded, and so that couldn't be used in the initial analysis. That is something we definitely want to fill in and then take a second pass at. We're also going to be considering washed versus unwashed. So again, using that well spacing example, if you have a water damage set that is within 1 mile of another set, initially, we're saying, well, that should be deaccessioned, but we also want to take into account, well, that other set, is it washed or unwashed? If it's unwashed, we'll want to do a physical review of both and see if it makes sense to still keep that moldy material in the deaccessioned list. So we'll also be considering drill type at a later date and the overall collection reduction that this whole process will result in. But like I said, this methodology, it is preliminary. This is what we've come up with, but we definitely want feedback from the industry. We definitely want to know what you guys think, make sure we haven't missed anything in our method, and, just make sure you're aware of it and see what you think. So please provide any feedback you have for me or Dave Harris. Thank you. And the next slide actually shows you a map that Dave created, giving you the dispersion of these water damage sample sets. So as you can see, the blue and red sets are what was flagged for rescue. The black is what was flagged to discard based on their relation to other sample sets. And then there are 454 wells that you do not see because we don't have an accurate location for them. So that's something we're trying to rectify. And now I will talk to you about the results from this project and how it will impact Earl and the industry. So for Earl, after this project is complete, and so after we have run methodology, reassessed, one, our water damaged material, and phase two, the unwashed material, we are estimating an increase of 30 to 50% of our shelving capacity. We will also have a much more robust and correct data set. And for the first time, pictures of the sample sets. These pictures will be a replacement of the physical samples, but they are replacing samples that were not of research quality and would not be safe to use in any kind of manner, really. So, and the end result would be an overall collection that is research quality and sustainable. The impact on industry is, again, we will be losing some sample sets, but we'll gain our data and our pictures. And this could impact future requests for samples. So if going through this process, we flag a water damage, keep using water damage as an example, but if we flag a water damage set for rescue, and then we get in there and it is a disaster, it is not salvageable, we will take our pictures, we will record all the data necessary, but that's going to leave a spot, if you will, open on the Kentucky map of a spot we're going to want samples for to represent the geology in that area. So that you could see some kind of impact there. I also wanted to note that after the proposal was written and submitted, we did locate 8 pallets of research quality washed sets on our mezzanine, and so those still need to be gone through, but those will not affect this project because they are adding good samples, and if anything, when we are going through this process and attempting to rescue, we might attempt to rescue more sample sets than would ultimately be necessary because they could have been replaced by these sets right here. So with that, I'm going to close with some of our internal projects that we're working on, and these are just as basically as time allows. So we are going to work on rectifying the incomplete well locations for particularly our core collection, that shelving that had the unknown, quote unquote, unknown core. We're also going to be doing a full review of available core data and checking that everything we have in our database is correct and making sure that it is as full as possible. And that will lead to a future reassessment of the core collection, which could be done looking particularly at, again, location information. We started scanning our core documents before the shutdown. That's kind of put the pause in that project, but we hope to continue that soon, hopefully in phase 3. And then once all of our documents are scanned, those will be available online. And we're also looking at some new data, developing some new data structures. One, we have a lot of returned research data from users of our facility and our sample. And so trying to catalog that in a way that is usable for the public, and so creating the optimal access to that data and tying data and publications together. And then the other data structure, Carrie Pulliam and I are working on this project to create a data table for recording relationships. And so if you have a location, trying to tie that to a core and tying that core to a core plug or a sample, and then any data that came off of that and any publication that came off of that. So very similar to that returned research idea, but this is more focused on the general problem and not waiting for someone to use said core per se. And so with that, I am open for questions. And if you think of anything after today, please email me. And if you would like to request an appointment at a later date or a service through Earl, please email Ryan Pinkston. Emily, did you have any questions pop up?
Yeah, it looks like we had 2 questions come through regarding the well cuttings reassessment.
Okay.
The first one was, this looks like a very labor-intensive project. How many hours have been spent on the project?
So far, not many. The preliminary work, it's all data related, and so it's really just querying and using GIS to run the analysis. The data collection, since we're targeting subsets of our overall collection of 15,000 sets, 17,000 sets, I'm sorry. Everything is available, everything is pretty much accessible on the physical boxes. It's just not in a digital form. And so getting it into a digital form so then we can use it in the analysis.
Okay. And then what is done with the deaccession? Are they destroyed?
Yes. So anything that we are saying should be deaccessioned is basically saying it is not usable in a research function. And so we make our best effort to gather all of the data that is available. We are not removing them. We are moving them from our existing data set to a new data set that data is still available. It's not gone, but the physical specimen, yes, would be gone. And we're doing that because they are considered a surplus of what we already have. And so in a sense, they're taking up valuable resources that could go to a new, more quote unquote useful cutting set, or they are not safe to view or to use in any research manner. They would be, any results that you would have would be suspect.
Okay. And a question from Rudy Vogt. He says, I still have my old catalog of well samples and still look at it. Can we now do a fairly up-to-date search of an area of the state for wells with samples or cores available through the website?
Yes, you can. Those are actually parameters that you can choose either through our online tabular search or through the map. There should just be check boxes. And if he wants to, I can't do a demonstration right now, but if I can email him and talk to him more specifically about how to do that. But it is available through the tabular search and through the map.
Okay, great. And it looks like our last question, Rudy says, good deal.
Okay.
Our last question is, KGS currently hiring or plan to hire more employees in the future?
At this moment, UK has us on a hiring freeze. Now, if we had a grant-funded project that required hiring a temporary employee or even possibly a GO1, it would depend. But again, it's funding not coming directly from the university. It's coming from an external source. That is my understanding on our hiring process right now.
Okay, great. I think any more questions, Ruth? I'd really like to thank Liz for taking the time today to speak to our group. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And let's see, one more time, I'd really like to thank our sponsors, Countrymark and Ergon, for presenting, AquaClear, Bingham Greenbaum Dole, Bitco, Black Ridge Resource Partners, Britannia, Countrymark, Cumberland Valley Resources, Diversified Gas and Oil Company, InLink Midstream, Ergon, Hughes Land, Phil Brown Insurance, Reliance Well Service, Steptoe and Johnson, Wyatt Tarrant and Combs. And a reminder that next week on July 7th, Dr. Bill Hannenberg will be speaking about the landslide risk to gas gathering lines and other pipelines. So if anybody has any additional questions, feel free to email Elizabeth or myself, and I can funnel any questions to her. And I appreciate everybody being here. Have a great afternoon.